There's power in the pivot. Are you in a season of pivoting? Could it be that this season God just has you pivoting to see if you're really going to lean in and trust, or you need to pick up some more tools for the journey you're going into? So it's not all the time you're not doing something right. Maybe God wants to add to the journey that you're going into. Yes, you're called to be that entrepreneur. I told you I have a special anointing to be a multi-billionaire. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. But the journey and the life things that I'm doing, I'm going into, I'm supposed to be doing this and doing that and grabbing my tools for the journey. Cause when I get there, I don't have time to get ready. I got to be ready.
You ought to already be ready.
I know what it means to get up and have a functioning schedule and having this meeting and that meeting and making sure that my household is together and making sure that I can multitask, because you can't be a multi-millionaire. You know how to multitask.
Please. It's in the word.
You ever had a moment where life said, plot twist, and all you could do was blink? Yeah, me too. Sometimes we pray for clarity, and God gives us surprise. Not to confuse us, but to redirect us. That interruption, that detour, that delay, it might just be the divine setup you didn't see coming. Welcome back to the series, The Power of Emotions, Take Back Your Power. Today's emotion, surprise. Not just a jump scare kind, but the kind that shakes things up just enough to shift you into purpose. Let's talk about divine disruption, unplanned blessings, and why what surprised you might just set you free.
Automatic redirection. Tired of being tested on the same lesson. Get the money, keep collecting. I expect the best and nothing less. I bet I get it. Automatic redirection. Tired of being tested on the same lesson. Get the money, keep collecting. I expect the best and nothing less. I bet I get it.
Hey family, what's going on? Welcome back to Man of Motivations Podcast. It is I, your host, Dominique Bishop. Got my dogs out, so pardon them. But we are jumping back into the series, The Power of Emotions, Take Back Your Power. And as you already have seen, we are going to talk about the emotion of surprise. Okay? Surprise is also known as the divine disruptor. Whether it's a good surprise or a bad surprise, it's honestly how you look at things that determines which way your feelings or emotions will go. So let's dive into it. Surprise is one of those curveball emotions, right? It catches you off guard. That's what surprise is. It's going to catch you off guard all the time. Unless you have people who are surprise spoilers, but that's only when you have surprise birthday parties and things like that, gender reveals. But I'm talking about divine surprises, something that no man knows about, right? When I say man, I mean mankind. That no man or woman knows about, but only God does. And sometimes things happen to us. These divine surprises causes us to have to pivot. But again, whether we pivot positively, whether we pivot positively or negatively is up to us and how we take it, right? So, surprise is heaven's favorite plot twist. The thing about surprise is that it could be chaotic, beautiful, or terrifying. But what we're going to do is we're going to learn to lean in. We have to be willing to lean in, just like all the other emotions that we talked about. We have to be able to lean into those emotions in order to allow them to lead us in a different direction than what we're going, than the way that we're already going. So what are the roots of surprise? Of course, the unexpected, right? You have the good, the bad, the joyful, and the jarring, right? So many different types of surprises you can have. You have your good surprises. Well, of course, you have your surprise birthday parties, surprise engagements. I love those videos you see on social media where the family members come back home from being on active duty and they surprise their family members at graduations or birthday parties and things like that. Those are amazing and beautiful surprises. Um, but then you also have surprises like accidents, right? You didn't plan to get into an accident, a vehicle accident, or whatever accident it was. You didn't plan to necessarily hurt yourself. That is a surprise. And again, it's just how we react to it determines on what's going to happen on the other end of that surprise, right? We already know somebody surprising us with a birthday party, engagement, things like that. If things are going well, it's going to be tears of joy. We're going to be happy. You're going to be shocked and in awe. And some people faint depending on how they react. Everybody reacts differently, right? But I want to give you an example because of a video I saw on social media. A young gentleman was speaking at a conference, and he was saying that every time he tries to do something, there's always something that goes bad. There's always some type of accident. There's always something. And he's like, he's gotten to the point where he feels like he's just going to stop trying new things because every time he tries something or wants to do something or take something to the next level, something always happens. And the presenter of the conference asked him, well, look, well, give me an example of what you're talking about. And he was telling him about one time when he broke his ankle playing basketball. And he said, yeah, man, I had high hopes and dreams of doing this and doing that and playing in college and all of this. And then I broke my ankle and that was all she wrote. And after he said that, immediately the presenter, he cut him off. He didn't want him to speak anymore, but he cut him off. He said, you stopped yourself. You stopped your basketball career. You stopped from being able to play in college. He was like, did you play in college? He was like, no, I didn't because I broke my ankle. He was like, did your ankle heal? Yeah, obviously. But he allowed his broken ankle to destroy all his dreams. His ankle being broken was obviously a surprise, right? But instead of, and I don't want to take away from his emotions because, again, we're talking about emotions. It's okay. You've got to process your emotions. I'm pretty sure he was upset. I'm pretty sure he was hurt. I'm pretty sure he was angry about the situation, about his ankle being broken. But in that same token, after processing those feelings and those emotions about his ankle being broken, then he had to go through a healing process. And having been an athlete myself, a former collegiate athlete, knowing that you have to rehab vigorously in order to get back to where you need to be in tip-top shape. So when you have an injury, you got to rehab it. You got to get with a trainer. You got to get with some type of specialist if you need one. They do workouts with you, and then you can get in the gym and start doing other workouts. Get back on the basketball court. You can, even though you're not able to use your legs in that point in time, you can do you can do dribbling with your hands. You can do, hand work, and you can still shoot with your arms. You know what I mean? You're just because his ankle was broke, his whole body wasn't messed up. It was just his ankle. But what I love that the presenter was getting at was he allowed that one incident that happened to him when he was in high school control the rest of his life in a negative way, to the point where he's a grown man now saying that I'm tired of trying new things because every time I try something new, something bad happens. And also, you have to be careful. Words have power too. That's why I don't like it when people talk in definites and definitives. Like, man, I never do this. I can't ever do that. That's never going to happen. No, never say never. I'll never amount to that. No, don't do that. Don't speak negative over yourself. Don't speak negative over your life. So when we have these surprises that in turn hurt us in a way. It's actually a process that we have to learn about in order to get us back on the right path. Everything happens for a reason, even if it's a surprise, right? Everything happens for a reason. Maybe that young man needed to learn something during his healing process. And I feel like personally, I don't know the gentleman, but I feel like he missed out on an opportunity to learn something. And anytime you want to level up, let's be real. There are gonna be trials. You're gonna be tested because you have to go through something in order to come out on the other side of something, right? You're gonna go through the rain and get to the sunshine. When you're building and you're doing and you're working on elevating yourself and being greater, there are going to be tests of feats for you to do in order for you to gain better awareness, in order for you, maybe it's a new skill you need to learn, something. There's always going to be something that you need to do in order to elevate yourself, right? If you're trying to elevate yourself. So, because you can't be the same throughout, you have to evolve. And part of evolving is being ever changing. Part of evolving is learning new things and doing new things. Part of evolving is having a broken ankle and still learning how to live your life. Still not allowing the dream of being able to play basketball leave you. We've seen it plenty of times of basketball athletes or athletes of any kind get hurt. I mean, get broken down and then come back. They may be out for a little while. I mean, a perfect example is one of my favorite players from Chicago, Derrick Rose. Man, you talk about an injured player. Every time you turn around, something was happening to Derrick Rose. But did that make him want to stop playing basketball? No, it didn't. It didn't make him want to stop playing basketball. He rehabbed, he got himself together, and he got back out on that court. Right? So many other players and athletes have gone through that. So that's just an example of the things that we have to go through in life, right? You may not play a sport, but if you come to something in your life where it's something out of the blue, it's a surprise to you, and you have a negative reaction to it, that's going to control your outcome. Again, process your emotions. Do what you got to do, but don't sit in those negative emotions. Get yourself out of that rut and keep moving forward. All right, so pardon me, my phone, Alexa, keep popping up. I'm not talking to you, Alexa. Okay. All these devices just listening to you all the time. Okay, so what are some of the related feelings to surprise? You have shock, of course, awe, disbelief, confusion, and wonder. Again, when we have these emotions, when we have these feelings, it's okay to process. We're supposed to process them. And if you don't know how to process them, or if you are unable to process them on your own, get help. Get somebody to help you process. There's so many different ways that you can process, which we'll talk about some later. And if you've been listening to this podcast, I always talk about writing things down. Journaling helps. Praying helps. Meditation helps, right? If you need to get a professional help, by all means do that. Go speak to a therapist, counselor, spiritual guide, spiritual advisor, whoever it is that you need to speak to outside of yourself, or someone who has knowledge of being able to process things. Do that, please. So the power frame for surprise is: surprise disrupts what's familiar, but disruption is often the birthplace of transformation. I already was talking about this. It shakes up your expectations so you can make room for revelation. And that's what I love about the different power frames that we've been talking about for each emotion, has always led back to leaning into that emotion to see, is there a problem that needs to be corrected? Like when we talked about anger, Why did this thing make me angry? Why did I react to that in that manner? Right? What is it about this that gets me so hot to the point that I want to react in such a visceral manner? Right? So lean into those emotions, and we're trying to figure out what it is that makes us react this way so we can learn ourselves better and be able to control our emotions. That's what this whole series is about. The power of emotions. They are extremely powerful. But the most important thing is you having that power, not the emotions having the power. There's a difference between somebody who has control over their emotions versus someone who's allowing their emotions to control them. Big difference. All right. The spiritual reflections we're going to talk about today. The first one is Isaiah 43:19. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Sometimes surprise is divine. And what it is a new door you didn't knock on, but needed to walk through. Divine surprises, divine intervention. Here's an example of one that I love. Luke 1:13 through 14, and it reads, New International Version. But the angel said to him, Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. So, of course, Luke is talking about Saint John. Around this time, this is the same time period where God sent Gabriel, the angel, to go speak to Mary about her carrying Jesus. And in that same token, you had Zachariah and his wife Elizabeth. They were much older and had not had any children. And they had both been praying and been wanting a child. And this is when Gabriel came to them and also said, don't be afraid. Zachariah, you're going to have a kid. You're going to have a son. And when he comes, you're going to name him John. And even in the scriptures, if you read some more about it, it even says that Zechariah was muted, meaning he couldn't speak. He couldn't speak for a while because of this situation. And it had everything to do with the baby's name being John, right? So when Mary was pregnant and she came over to see Elizabeth and Zachariah because she heard that Elizabeth was pregnant, if you read in the scripture, and this is just in lamest terms, it says that the baby inside of Elizabeth jumped for joy. Because when Mary walked in the room, the Savior was in her womb, and John was in Elizabeth's room, and it said the baby jumped. So I love this scripture because they wanted something so bad and they had been praying for it. And God came to them and surprised them. God sent Gabriel and surprised them and said, Hey, look, I've been hearing you. You've been praying. Don't worry about it. Zechariah, Elizabeth, you are going to have a child. And his name going to be John. Divine surprise. Right? Divine surprise. And John was coming because he was coming. And John was coming because he was making way for Jesus. If you read in the scriptures, John and Jesus were very, very close. I mean, very close. They were like, bosom brothers, bosom buddies. And if you read St. John, he talks about how much he loved Jesus. And he was basically right there with him, and he even baptized him. So they grew up together. But it's a beautiful thing having a divine surprise from God. Because one thing about divine surprises from God is that they don't make sense to other people, even to you. Think about it. Zachariah and Elizabeth were old. or let me not say old. They were beyond the years of bearing children. Elizabeth was beyond the years of bearing children, right? And for Gabriel to come to her and say, hey, you're going to have a son, you're going to have a kid. Here you go. Boom. You pregnant. That's just what it was. Same thing with Mary. She was a virgin. That was a divine surprise, right? And so many other divine surprises that are in the Bible, especially pertaining to um, children um, being born, right? So divine surprises often come when logic says it's too late or too impossible. That's the beauty of a divine surprise when it's coming from God, because it's always going to be something that's not going to make sense to you or anybody else, right? Or if you're thinking something is too late, like that young gentleman we were talking about earlier who broke his ankle and couldn't play basketball in that moment, but he could have thought it was probably too late for him. He could have thought it was impossible for him. But if he would have continued and kept working at it and having faith and having a positive attitude about it, I'm pretty sure he could have got back to playing basketball and doing the things that he wanted to do. I believe that sometimes we're placed in positions to see how bad we truly want it, right? Because, and this is just me speaking. I'm not coming from no Bible scriptures or nothing. This is just me speaking. This is just how I'm thinking. We want so much out of life, or I say I want so much out of life. And I'm sure there are others out there that do too. But are we really truly willing to work for what it is we want out of life? Why do you think that there are more middle class and maybe, you know, poverty stricken people than there are millionaires? Or why do you think that there are more how you say regular people like you and me than there are celebrities or actors or even athletes, right? You think about the superstars, you think about those different people. I think about people like Jordan. I think about people like Kobe, right? They went the extra mile. Yes, they were gifted as well. Let's just be real. But at the same time, they worked hard for everything they had. Another great example I like to talk about is Beyonce. You look at her career from how she started to where she is now. She has been through a lot. Let's just be honest. Um, yeah, she was shielded from a lot as far as or I say we were shielded from what she went through behind the scenes. We don't know everything. But in order for you to have that much stardom, in order for you to have that much success in life, you are going to go through some things. It's inevitable. If you truly want to be successful in life, if you truly want to elevate, evolve, and go to the next level, it's like a test every time. Think about it. When we were in school, in elementary school, even all the way up to your doctorate, you have to do something in order to obtain that. I mean, unless you get an honorary doctorate, which is something completely different. But when you're in elementary school, in order for you to go to the next grade, you had to take a test, right? when we were in, I want to say, was it eighth grade? When I was in eighth grade, we had to take the Constitution test. We take all those other standardized tests in order for us to graduate eighth grade and then go to high school. When you get in high school, you have to take this test. You have to do this test. And my school, we had driver's education. We had to do driver's ed. I had to take this test, to get to graduate from high school, right? So each level you need to get to, there's always a test that you have to pass. And if you were in school, well, up until they started doing No Child Left Behind, but to the point where they just started passing everybody, just pushing kids through. But before, if you didn't pass your test, if you didn't do it right, you got left behind. You had to stay back another grade. That's just what it was. Because you didn't show that you understood what was taught to you. You didn't grasp it. So why should we allow you to go to the next grade or the next level if you haven't grasped the information that you were taught at this level? It's the same thing in life. Why would you think God is going to allow you to elevate to the next level in life if you haven't even grasped or understood all the lessons that he was trying to teach you at this level? You got to master this level first in order to get to this level, right? So sometimes that's where these tests or these divine surprises come in at. You got to pivot. You got to be able to pivot in life. If things don't work out here, right? Then what can I do over here? And I'm gonna give y'all a real life example, something that personally happened to me a little bit later. Um, but let's get back to this. So think about that. From elementary school all the way on to, like I said, your doctorate. In order for you to have a doctorate, and no matter what it is, you have to write a dissertation. Like you have to prove that the area that you have been studying, like you understand that. They're not gonna, like I said, unless it's an honorary doctorate, you're not getting a degree or a doctorate degree in urban economics or economics period or whatever. So many different doctorates out there. Let's just say, let's just go with theology. You're not going to get a doctorate in theology if you can't write the dissertation or complete the dissertation on theology. Am I right? If you don't complete it, or if you don't do your hours, or if you don't do what needs to be done, you're not going to get handed that degree. You're not going to be able to put dot in front of your name. That's just what it is. You're not going to be able to put PhD behind your name. That's just what it is. Now, you got a lot of people out here faking and all that, but we ain't gonna talk about that. I'm not gonna talk about that. But that's what it is. You have to show yourself approved. That's what it is. You have to show yourself approved. And even outside of being religious or being spiritual, that's just what it is in life as well. You have to show yourself approved. You have to show that you have attained this knowledge and you understand it in order to go to the next level. Okay. So God doesn't just work in plans, he also works in pivots. That's what we just talked about. Working in pivots, right? Being able to maneuver with life. That's what life is all about. You got to be able to work with the unexpected. It's just all about how you're processing your emotions. So, what does surprise look like in the body and the spirit? So, physically, what do we look at? Widened eyes, gasping. Oh my God, right? Accelerated heartbeat. Your heart start to pitter patter. Um, Surprise can either trigger joy or fear depending on the perception of what you're being surprised with. Now, let's say, for example, Zachariah and Elizabeth got that divine surprise and were told that they were going to have a child. What do you think would have happened if they received that or perceived that in a fearful manner instead of being grateful that they were going to get that? Do you think that the story of John would be different? I do. Of course, we'll never know at this point in time, but I do. I think the story of St. John would be completely different if they would have had a different perception of what was done to them, right? Same thing with Mary and Joseph. Joseph had to be calmed down because let's just be honest, Mary is pregnant and you really not the father. You're the earthly father. But we know how that went down, right? Because she was a virgin. So he could have went way left with that. Joseph could have went way left with that and was like, you know what? Forget all this. My girl got pregnant. I don't know how he could have went way left with that. He could have perceived that in a totally different way, but it was all ordained. Again, it's all about your perception of your surprise, whether it's a fearful perception or whether it's a joyous perception. It's all about how you perceive it and how you handle it and how you process it. Spiritually, surprise invites surrender. It's the space between what was and what could be. We already been on this plane right here. It's the difference between what was and what it could be. Going back to that young man in that ankle situation, him breaking his ankle. If he would have had a different outlook, if he would have perceived it differently, his outlook could have been much better about life. Because let's say that was his first major obstacle, and from the way he explained it, it seemed like it was. It seemed like that was the first obstacle that he had that stopped him from doing something he wanted to do. Then he kept trying to do new things in life, or kept trying to do other things, and other obstacles would come up. And he allowed them to stop him because he perceived things differently. He perceived it in the wrong manner. If he had perceived it in a more positive manner, then what? Probably would have turned out totally different. He could have been the next superstar. We don't know. So let's be honest now. Sometimes life surprises are downright ridiculous. I'm gonna give you an example of one, which is this one is funny. You planned for a promotion and you got laid off, or you were running late only to avoid an accident you would have been in, or maybe you tripped walking into church and fell in front of your crush. But even in the awkward, uncomfortable, and laughable moments, God is still at work. See, for us, things are going to catch us off guard. Things may feel awkward to us. Things may feel weird to us, but it's all in God's plan. There are no coincidences. I just truly don't believe that there are coincidences. Even the divine surprises, everything happens for a reason. Joy can ride in on the back of what looked like embarrassment. Remember that. All right, so let's look at healthy expressions versus fear-based reactions. Okay, so unhealthy reaction to surprise is immediate shutdown or rejection of anything unfamiliar. Do you know some people like that? Complaining instead of asking, what is this teaching me? Worrying instead of wondering. Okay. Healthy engagement with surprise, it sounds like this. Breathe through the moment and acknowledge this is new, but not bad. Perception. This is a new thing that has happened to me, but it's not a bad thing. Let's work around this. We're always going to find a way to work around this, right? Ask, what is this redirecting me toward? Okay, I'm going to use that same example of the gentleman who broke his ankle. Maybe God could have been redirecting him to do something else. Maybe he could have redirected him to, maybe it wasn't meant for him to get back to basketball, or maybe he want to redirect him to get in his studies and do something else. He could have been a sports broadcaster or studied in something else, right? Journal or voice note your first reactions. Then return later with clarity. So if you have something that happens to you as a surprise and it's jarring, it's not necessarily one of those good surprises where you're happy. Take a moment if you are able. If not, as soon as you get the opportunity, take a moment, sit down and journal about it. And let's see what's up. All those emotions that you're feeling, put it down on paper. Put it down on paper. Write it down. Anything that you're thinking, write it down. All of the different millions of possibilities, all of the everything that's coming to your mind, everything that you're feeling, journal it. Sit it down for a minute. That's what we're saying. Sit it down for a minute. Process your emotions. Okay. Once you process and once your head is clear, go back to that journal and read what you wrote. In a clear mindset and a level head, what you just wrote, it is going to help you redirect, right? You're going to look at what you wrote before and you're like, man, I was kind of all over the place. But in your right mindset, using a level head, you can look at all those things and start to put things in order. Or say, you know what? Well, I had this reaction because of this. I felt this way because of this, right? And then journaling again. This time journal with a clear mind. And you'll be surprised at the difference you get. Okay. Now, if you have one side that's negative, I want you to redirect that and try to make that a positive. Make those negative statements positive statements. Okay. So if your first reaction was negative, after you cleared your mind, and got yourself together, go back and I want you to look at those same comments and redirect them and make them into positive comments. Try that. Try that. Okay. So now, think of this. When was the last time a surprise turned out to be a blessing in disguise? I'm gonna tell you one in a minute. Oh, I'm gonna tell you one right now, actually. Um, y'all always know I'm looking at my notes. So, remember I told you I had my DUI, right? Fresh out of college. So now moving forward to, this is 2012. So remember the fresh DUI, I wasn't able to get into law enforcement immediately because everybody was like, well, with a fresh DUI, you can't be law enforcement. It has to have been between 5 to 7 years. Majority of them were saying 7 years, the departments that I were applying for. So it's 2012. This is what, 8, 9, 10, yeah, 5 years. This is 5 years from the incident. And so still can't get a job with PD. At this time I was working for a bank, and I was working for a bank through a temp agency. And I was doing quite well at the bank. Making some good money too. Making some good money. Yeah, that was some good money. Had decent benefits. And it was one of those situations where after you worked with a temp agency for so long, you can get hired on to work with the actual company. So they had started laying off people. And I had been talking to some of the supervisors and management, and they kept saying my name, and they were like, oh yeah, well no, we're looking at a couple people, and you came highly recommended to come work for the bank, so we're probably going to bring you over. I kept hearing this from people. We're going to bring you over. We're going to bring you over. Don't worry about the layoffs. We're going to bring you over. So here I am thinking I'm about to get picked up, because I mean they were going through layoffs like crazy because the workload was starting to come down. So it's just about every week they were doing layoffs, and I went through, I want to say, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was a lot. I don't know why, but I think I want to say maybe 7 or 8 phases of layoffs I survived. And again, I'm not I wasn't worried. I was still coming to work every day, making my good money, working overtime, getting paid every week, good benefits. I'm getting ready to be an employee with the bank, right? They gonna transfer me over. I'm not gonna be a temp no more. Um, but then I was off. Actually, no, I wasn't off. I was actually out, and I was trying to make it home so I could take a nap and get ready to go to work that night. So I'm out and about trying to get home, and I get a phone call from the staffing agency and they let me go. They let me go, y'all. So I went from hearing about possible promotion, possible being signed on with the company, to out of nowhere, they called me and laid me off over the phone. But I actually was grateful that they laid me off over the phone, because I was like, well, I can stay out. I can keep kicking it, right? I was like, well, what else am I gonna do? I don't have to go to work tonight. Um, but initially, yes, I was very devastated, because that is not what I thought was going to happen at all. Um, but let's talk about the pivot real quick, because the pivot was crazy. So I was laid off and started to draw unemployment. And I was like, what else can I do? I still couldn't do law enforcement because of this fresh DUI. What else could I do? And I said, well, the next best thing out of law enforcement was working security. Now, working in Illinois, security is regulated, meaning you have to have a certification in order to work security. So what I did was, um, I found a couple of companies that will help you get your certification, and then I found some schools that will help you get your certification. And of course, all that stuff costs money. So they had a 20-hour unarmed class, and then they had a 40-hour class. Either one, once you finish, you will get your perk card, which is it's an permanent employee registration card. That's what you would get as a security officer. So you can use that. But if you work the 20 hours, you get to work only unarmed positions. If you work 40, then you can work unarmed and armed. Me, I'm the type of person, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and do it, the whole thing. So, of course, I took the 40-hour class, saved up my money for my unemployment, went ahead and got the class, got my perk card, boom. Now, I'm back in the workforce. So, that gave me some time, right? Because I'm still waiting on this DUI to fall off or whatever. Um, but it put me back to working security. I had some really good security jobs working in different environments. I worked in trucking spots. I worked for chemical plants. I worked all over. Um, and I had some management positions as well, supervisors, team leads, stuff like that, right? And then the opportunity finally came where I was able to do law enforcement. So I started out with a company in Illinois, and then I relocated, and I've been PD and all that stuff. So thank God for that. But it's amazing that I had got that surprise. I went from thinking I was going to be promoted and be hired on to being laid off. The thing about the story is that I didn't sit and wallow in my self pity, and I didn't get angry at them for laying me off. At the end of the day, a job is a job. Was I upset? Of course I was. I went from having a full-time job with benefits um to not having a job at all, and now I'm drawing unemployment. And then you called me over the phone and laid me off. Which was smart on their part, right? They didn't know how I would react, especially after you've been telling me you was going to hire me on. But God blessed me to where I was able to draw unemployment. I still had money coming in. I was still able to pay, my bills. And then I was able to pivot and go ahead and start security. Got my certification for security. So, it made me think maybe that wasn't ordained for me to work at that bank, right? It's just amazing how God works, because we thinking one thing and he's like, nah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. I want you to do something else. So I'm going to close this door and make you redirect and go somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened to me. And it's okay, guys. It's okay to pivot. We got to be able to pivot. It's okay to redirect. Again, process those emotions. Don't wallow in them. Don't sit in them too long. Get back to grinding and get back to doing what you need to do. Okay. So even that, God showed up for me. Even though none of that was planned, I wasn't even thinking about doing security because I was working at that bank and I was making good money. What did I need a security job for? Right? I was going to hang tight there until it was time for me to start back applying for law enforcement positions again. I was already on the waiting list for CPD. They was going to hold on to me and keep me in their profile up until it was time for me to reapply again, right? It was a couple of other police stations that said the same thing, but until then, I was going to be working at the bank. But God was like, nah, I don't want you to work at the bank. Go do something else. And I did. So it worked out. It worked itself out. All right. So we're always going to have a challenge. So this week's challenge, make sure you embrace your unexpected moments that you have. Embrace them. Okay. And ask God, what is He revealing through that unexpected moment? Okay. I want you to think about my story, how I was able to pivot, how God closed one door and opened up another one, gave me ideas, right? I did the work. I did what I had to do. I saved up my money to take those security classes, those courses, got my certification, started working. You got to be able to pivot. Sometimes I think we get so focused on something that we want so bad that when it doesn't happen, we feel crushed. Did I want that job at that bank? I did. I really did. Because in that point in time, that was the most money I had ever made. And it was some, like I said, I'm still talking about it to this day. That was some good money. I've made more since then, thank God. But at that time, being at the age I was what? 25, 24, 25. I was making some good money for a 24, 25-year-old. Okay. And I wanted to continue to make that money and get raises and get bonuses. But that's not what God wanted me to do. So I got laid off. He closed that door and I had to pivot and figure some things out. So we have to be open to other possibilities. Okay. Make sure that you meditate on the scriptures. Of course, Isaiah 43:19, where he's doing a new thing. He did a new thing for me. He can definitely do a new thing for you. And also, I want you to think about Luke 1, verses 13 to 14. Think about Zechariah and Elizabeth. Think about their story. And think about John, how he was an unexpected, divine surprise. Your affirmation for this week is, I trust divine disruption. I make room for the unexpected. What surprises me may just set me free. Say it again. I trust divine disruption. I make room for the unexpected. What surprises me may just set me free. One more time. I trust divine disruption. I make room for the unexpected. What surprises me may just set me free. That's what I'm talking about. So you're not off track, okay? You're just being rerouted. You know how it is in GPS. When you make a wrong turn, GPS rerouting, bring you back right back to where you need to go. That's what God will do for you. That's what He did for me. I got laid off of that job. He was rerouting me. He said, "You think you want this, but this is not what I want for you. So we're gonna reroute you. You're getting laid off." It happens like that sometimes. All right. So again, don't forget to process your emotions. We talked about the journaling, right? That helps. When you get that moment and you're able to clear your mind and you're able to regulate yourself and think with a level head, go back, look over what you read, and I want you to counter that with positive emotions. Okay? If the stuff that you wrote down initially was all negative, all why this or why that, I want you to counter that with positive journaling. Think of the positive things that could come out of that surprise instead of the negative. All right? We're not going to be like the gentleman who got his ankle broke and just stopped playing basketball completely. Okay? That's not going to be us. Just because something happens doesn't mean it's meant for you to necessarily stop. All right? And in these moments, that's why it's extremely important for you to have a relationship with God and for you to keep your ears and your heart and your mind open to Him so He can speak to you and tell you what it is that you need to do. All right? Family, look, I love you. I truly do. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be talking to you like this. But I truly love you, and I want the best for every single one of you. I truly do. I want y'all to win so bad. And I want you to continue to like and share these videos. Hit me in the comments. Tell me, once you finish watching, if you enjoyed it or if you have any questions, get at me. No problem. And I always have my social media up, and I'm gonna put it up at the end of this video as well. I need to start doing that more regularly. But anyway, I'll put it up at the end of this video, and I want y'all to chime in and follow me on my different social media outlets. Contact me. Get in contact with me if you or anyone want to come on a podcast. I'm more than welcome. I'm more than open to doing that, right? There's so many different things that I want to talk about, and I know that there are some other things that you all probably want to hear about, okay? So I am getting ready to get off of here. I thank you again for tuning in. I love you, and always, always remember, your crown may be tilted, but never, ever let it fall.
Redirection. Tired of being tested on the same lesson. Get the money, keep collecting. I expect the best and nothing less. I bet I